Bathhouse and Aqueducts by Cody Keller and Devin Anderson.
Early Roman physicians understood the health risks of living next to stagnant and stale waters. Thus, they devised a plan to be able to move the water away from them in a healthy and clean manner. They devised a plan to create the aqueduct. The aqueduct changed the history of Rome forever. The physicians also advised that you bathe regularly and clean off the dirt and dead skin of the day. Thus, the daily bath was born. The aqueduct is a bridge that is constructed to convey water over an obstacle, such as a ravine or valley. Romans constructed aqueducts to bring water from distant lands. Aqueducts supplied public baths, latrines, and fountains. They also supplied water to private households. There were 11 aqueducts that sustained a population of over 1 million in water. Most of the water was used in public baths, even though the aqueduct was made way before the time of the public bath was. The aqueducts were built using arches. These arches were used to support the water being transported over the aqueducts. The arches helped support them because they had more internal integrity and were stronger than using any other shape. The arch was used in multiple other Roman constructions too, not just the aqueducts. The aqueducts moved water through gravity alone, along a slight downward gradient within conduits of stone, brick, or concrete. Most were buried beneath the ground and followed its contours. Obstructing peaks were circumvented or less often tunneled through. When valleys or lowlands intervened, the conduit was carried on bridge work, or its contents fed into a high-pressure lead, ceramic, or stone pipes, and siphoned across. Most aqueduct systems included sedimentation tanks, sluices, and distribution tanks to regulate the supply as needed. Most of Romans' aqueducts got their supply and drew on various springs in the valley and highlands of the Anio River. Although the aqueducts were mainly used in public baths, the aqueduct was also used to transport water used in farming, industry, and households as a whole. Bathing was so important to the ancient Romans that they even had a goddess of bathing, the goddess Sul, or Sullus. Romans built an imposing temple at the springs in honor of Sullus. They constructed sumptuous bath buildings, a great altar, and reservoir for the sacred spring water. The goddess Sullus was a derivative from the Celtic word sul, for sun and eye, and Suliad, meaning wisdom. She is also the goddess of healing water. In ancient Rome, many of the aqueducts would just provide water to a main public fountain. This fountain could be found in a town square for the main public to use and to get water from on their daily needs. The Roman bathhouses and fountains were provided water through Roman aqueducts. The aqueducts could be found above or underneath the ground. These aqueducts were constructed using either lead or ceramic. Ceramic was preferred over lead because the early physicians understood the health risks to humans of using lead pipes and water. One of the most advanced aqueduct systems is in Naples, Rome. This aqueduct system could transport over 46 million gallons of water daily. Many of Rome's aqueducts are still in use today. Some of them still supply water to the old bathhouses that have been remodernized. Some of the aqueducts were even used during World War II as bomb shelters. As you can see in this picture above, there are 3 families using this aqueduct as a bomb shelter during World War II. To heat the Roman baths, the Romans would use hypocausts. To do this, the bathhouse floor was raised high by pillars called pillae stacks, so that hot air and smoke from the furnace could warm the walls and the floor. Rooms that needed to be heated the most were placed closer to the furnace. The furnace was always burning, which created heat, which flowed through the spaces in the raised floor. This heated the floor and the rest of the room. It was labor-intensive because the fire needed to be tended to. The man credited for making the Hippocaust is Sergius Orata. It has not been completely confirmed, so he's only credited with inventing it. He was well known among the people of Rome because of his breeding and commercialization of oysters. He made channels and prays to control sea tides so that he could better enhance the breeding of his oysters. One theory is that he developed the Hippocaust to feed his oysters, although we are not sure about his invention of Hippocausts. We do know that he invented the hanging baths, which were usually referred to as Hippocausts. He made these baths known by commercializing them. Orado would buy villages to construct these baths, and then he would sell them at a higher price than what he bought them for. Sergius was extinguished for his love of wealth and luxury. This was during the time of 1st century BC. We do not know the exact year, but the Hippocausts were used from the late to early 3rd century in Rome. The Hippocausts were used in the city of Rome. Wealthy Romans used the heating technology to outdo each other's Roman bathhouses. The poorer Romans bathed in the public bathhouses. Although it did not matter whether you were rich or poor, everyone used the baths. However, the richer Romans would use the baths on the daily, while the poorer Romans would only get to use the baths about once every week. The average bathhouse would have mirrors covering the walls, and the ceilings were buried in glass as well, and the pools were lined with rich marble and complicated mosaics covered the floors. Roman baths consisted of 3 types of baths: the cold bath, the warm bath, and the hot bath. The cold bath, a frigidarium; the warm bath, the tepidarium; and the hot bath, the calidarium. When taking a bath in a Roman bathing complex, the visitors would pay an entrance fee. Then, strip naked and hand their clothes to an attendant. The visitor then could do exercising to work up some type of sweat before moving into the tepidarium, which would prepare them for the calidarium, which was like a modern sauna. After the calidarium, a slave would rub olive oil into the visitor's skin and then scrape it off with a strigil. More luxurious establishments would have a professional masseur to do this for you. The strigil was a small, curved metal tool used to scrape dirt, sweat, and debris from the body. First, perfumed oil was applied to the skin, and then it'd be scraped off, along with the dirt and debris from the day. The ancient Romans went to the public baths for many reasons. These reasons included entertainment, healing, or even just to get clean. Many Romans went to the baths to meet friends and spend their spare time there. The large bathhouses had restaurants, game rooms, and snack bars. Some even had libraries. The public bathhouses were mainly for men. They had certain days where they would allow women to go to and use the baths. At the bathhouses, business was often discussed there. The daily bath became such a social occasion, and it was known as, or similar to, today's Y or country club. And although the bathhouses had different days where men and women could go, they also had many luxurious bathhouses in which they would allow men and women both to go, but they would just have the separation of sexes. This was very, very common. Today's Roman baths are one of the finest historic sites in Northern Europe and one of the most popular tourist attractions in the United Kingdoms. It is run by the Heritage Services section of the Bath and North East Somerset Council. Today's Roman baths attract around 1 million visitors per year. Most of the visitors visit the heritage attractions in the UK. It's only $20 for an adult to visit. The Romans' bathhouses were taxed accordingly to how much water they used, along with the size of the pipes that they had. Many of them used a basic water supply. The engineers who built the bathhouses needed extremely complex engineering skills. They built the bathhouses mainly to make a statement, also for the public's enjoyment. Early Roman latrines had constantly running water through them. The water was supplied to them through aqueducts. While using a Roman public restroom involved sitting cheek to cheek with your neighbor, discussing the political events of the week, planning dinner parties, scheming for invitations to said dinner parties, you sat along a long marble bench with keyhole-shaped cutouts, a small trough on the floor in front of you, running with clean water. The trench directly under you, flushing often with gray water from a nearby bath complex. The waste of the latrine out to the main sewer. Depending on the quality of the facility, a slave may be on hand ready to offer you a sea sponge, freshly cleaned in vinegar, attached to the end of a stick. No wasteful use of trees to make toilet paper here. The sea sponge gets cleaned off after use to be offered to the next customer. I guess the Romans also gave us the concept of reduce, reuse, and recycle. Who knew?